Hi guys, welcome back to the BMW guy channel, and today we're discussing quite a hot topic on YouTube, and that is going to be how to hypermile your BMW. So if you don't know what hypermiling is essentially driving your vehicle in a way that gets the optimum, the maximum sort of miles per gallon possible. So I'm going to go through a couple of techniques on how to do it, a couple of things that you can do to sort of boost your MPGs. I've made a previous video fairly similar to this, but this is going to be more towards the hypermiling and sort of modifications that you can do to your car that will or changes you can do to it that will enable it to achieve better fuel economy. So if you're like me and you're a fan of fuel economy, then you probably own a diesel. If not, then you just bought the wrong car, because these diesels are getting so much more to the gallon than the petrols do. Now I've had a couple of people ask me why their petrols are using so much more MPG than my car, and one of the main reasons is just because they're petrol rather than diesel. So they rev more and they use more fuel. There are an issue with the petrols where they have issues with the fuel evaporating in the fuel lines due to excess heat and lack of heat shielding around them, but that only affects a couple of cars. So really it's purely because you're driving a petrol rather than diesel. Some of these techniques I'm going to talk about in this video do apply to petrols as well, however. So yeah, so let's get into it. So I haven't driven this car nearly 25,000, well 22,000 miles now. I've sort of worked out what's the best way is to get the best fuel economy, and one of the first things is to make sure that you're carrying as little as possible in the car. So obviously weight equals rolling resistance on the tyres. That's a rather simplified way of how energy is wasted in the car, but basically if you carry lots of stuff in your car like I do, you can see it's just rammed full of stuff constantly, then you're inevitably going to use more fuel, because the way that the physics works is essentially you're pushing down on the road with the weight, which is creating more rolling resistance on the tyres, which essentially then wastes energy, or well, kinetic energy forwards that your engine produces. So it just makes the whole system much less efficient. Another way of boosting your fuel economy is to make sure that your tyres are properly set to the right pressures. So a lot of people, they sort of fill the tyres up once a year and don't really bother checking them, but it really does make that much of a difference to your fuel economy. So if you don't know how to do this, have a look on the inside of your driver's door. You'll see the plaque here tells you the optimum for each scenario, and as you can see there are different ones. So if you've got just a few people, or luggage, or a full car and full luggage, etc., you really need to be making sure your tyres are pressured up to the correct sort of pressure for each situation that you're going in. And also the temperature, the ambient temperature outside, the way that obviously air works is that when it's warmer it expands, so the pressure within the tyre is greater. So as it becomes colder, you may actually find that your tyres are losing pressure, and this isn't because they have got a puncture or anything, it's just because the air within inside is contracting, and the pressure is then decreasing. So that's another thing to consider. Moving on then, we just need to make sure our car is nicely serviced, regularly serviced. The best, if you've got fresh oil in your car, it's obviously going to run a lot smoother, and the fuel is going to go much further just because of the less internal resistance within the engine. So that's another thing to bear in mind, and make sure your fuel filters change so you're getting nice clean fuel. Then we're going to sort of get into driving habits, and I'm not going to go out for a drive now just to show you, but I will sit inside the car to get out of all the noise. So what we can do here is we need to be making sure that we've got air conditioning off, which is this button here. You can have the fans on, that's okay, but what I've found over the last few thousand miles, especially as it's getting sort of over the summer, I've been noticing that as soon as I turn the AC on, you can instantly see your range dropping, and that's because, again, the AC pump is draws from the engine, which then creates more resistance on the engine, and then obviously uses more fuel. So that's another thing to bear in mind. So we just want to be making sure that the windows are shut, etc. So we've got less air resistance. And there's a technique called pulse and glide, which essentially is where you accelerate up to speed and then just let off the throttle ever so slightly, or just let off the throttle and freewheel until your speed sort of starts to decrease, and then just touch the throttle again just to maintain that speed. And just that balance of taking your foot off the throttle and back on will dramatically increase your fuel economy. The best way to sort of practice this is to have it, so I'll just put the ignition on to show you, is so that your current miles per gallon is displayed. So if we just press BC a couple of times to accept all of these errors going on, I'll just turn this down. So this is our average fuel economy here, and this one will be our current. So what you'll notice is when you let off the accelerator, the MPG will go to 99.9, and that's essentially because you're using almost no fuel whatsoever. So the more you can keep it up at that level, the better, really. You can do this also coming up to junctions, slowing up for bends, etc. Just let off the accelerator rather than braking. It's a technique in advanced driving called acceleration sense, and it's basically optimizing how much fuel you use and getting your speed right so that you barely have to even touch the brakes, because if you have to brake, it's essentially you're wasting fuel, because the speed that the fuel that you've used to get to the speed that now requires you to brake is essentially wasted. Whereas if you accelerate up and then ease off enough to be able to round the bend, then that's the optimal way of doing it. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Just a few little tips on how to hypermile your BMW 1 Series. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'd really be interested to know what the maximum MPG that you've got from your car is. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.